What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Big Mustard Couch. Here with another video. Yeah, so CM Punk no longer with AEW. Who could have foreseen that happening, right? Maybe we could say that potentially the writing was on the wall, and while I don't necessarily do this video welcoming or happy about the news as it pertains to CM Punk being fired from AEW, as my first video was about CM Punk and all the backstage issues and his behavior or his approach just lending itself to what, in hindsight, many society would consider a toxic work environment. I think that we all seen the writing on the wall as far as this happening. And I'll preface my comments by saying by now, so many of you have probably heard already about all the different news, have probably um, digested so many different news outlets covering the story, especially since last Sunday, which I'm going to get into because my previous video I talked about me ordering my first AEW event and ultimately enjoying it. However, what overshadowed that particular event was the backstage altercation between CM Punk and Jack Perry, and then later on in the week, the altercation to which that he had with his boss, Tony Khan. So again, like I said, I know there's a lot of media news coverage on the story. I know there's a lot of information, and by the time this video comes out, y'all probably going to be over the whole CM Punk situation and moving on to something else. First and foremost, what I want to do is bring highlight to an article from Wrestling Inc. That talks about more of the details in the investigation that led to AEW and CM Punk parting ways. And it goes as follows. So CM Punk is going from AEW in the aftermath of his backstage incident with Jack Perry at AEW All In. The decision was confirmed as a result of an internal investigation into the incident with consultation from legal counsel and announced by Tony Khan last night. Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez discussed the investigation process during the installment of Wrestling Observer Radio airing after AEW Collision. They revealed that the investigation throughout the week involved collecting statements from eyewitnesses to the altercation between Punk and Perry, as well as an outside inquisition into the background of the conflict and the way things had changed over the past year. This was said to involve a lot of wrestlers. As for the disciplinary committee that had come together with lawyers and external investigators to help in Khan's decision, Meltzer said he didn't have the names. All three parties came to the unanimous decision to recommend for Punk's dismissal. Meltzer said that there is so much to it that hasn't come out that contributed to the decision. He also said that he had been too kind in reporting Punk's alleged lunging towards Tony Khan during the incident. If you saw the actual wording of what was said lunging, I was toning it down. It was more than lunging. Brian Alvarez added that Punk's dismissal had been broken to the talent backstage prior to last night's episode of AEW Collision in a talent meeting. As of this writing, A Still's AEW future is also unknown. A couple of things that I find interesting about this article. So, first and foremost, again, so many different stories and so many different takes on exactly what happened, from CM Punk putting Jack Perry in a chokehold to um, Jack Perry pushing past CM Punk to CM Punk approaching Jack Perry with a number of individuals, and that's sparking everything. And this was all stemming from the Jack Perry wanting to use real glass, him and CM Punk having discourse about that, to which Punk had every right to suggest that using real glass is dangerous, not necessary, and doesn't really necessarily add anything to the lore, to the match, or to the segment, or whichever Jack Perry wanted to use the real glass in. But this particular situation did it have to go this far? I don't think so. Uh, Jack Perry, yeah, he did a shoot into the camera to where, for those who know, you know, uh, was referencing the conversation that happened backstage or this regarding the usage of real glass, and Punk obviously took offense to this. So while I do side again with Punk in the sense of advocating and stepping up as a locker room leader, suggesting like, hey, you know, you not using real glass and potentially ultimately protecting the wrestlers. I do have to again blame Tony Khan in this particular situation. And I wanted to, and the thing is I want to take a different take in the sense of approach this from a different take than other folks have been approaching it. And what it comes down to is privilege. And I feel that it might be the privilege of backstage politics or just the atmosphere ultimately of wrestling, to which is, is it's creative chaos, right? It's organized chaos ultimately when you think about the booking of the matches, matches being produced as far as um, moves, spots, the story, things of that nature, right? So there's a real creative side to it. So ultimately, these guys, they're not really necessarily fighting, but ultimately they're entertaining and they're putting on a great show, for the masses. The privilege that I want to speak to is the fact that Punk, as to which I understood, was making the most money in AEW. He has his millions, right? At any point in time, especially in society, nobody at any point can lunge, let alone threaten their boss, right? So Punk is operating from that particular mindset. And ultimately, what I kind of question is, did Punk sort of do this on purpose? Did he kind of create the chaos to where ultimately he could get out of his contract with AEW? Because we spoke about it in the first video. He was displeased, doesn't like the atmosphere and of AEW, and is very verbal in that. But again, it just comes back down to this privilege as far as what is good for some is not good for all. And the thing is that CM Punk ultimately expressing his discourse by verbally, let alone physically threatening his boss. Not a lot of people could get away with that. And ultimately, this is his job, and wrestlers, they are independent contractors, but at the same time, there's a level of decorum, there's a level of professionalism that they still have to maintain. And while I do appreciate Punk's stance on certain things, because by no means do I feel Punk is a bad guy. Do I think that is he a little bit too verbal, or that how he handles things is always the best? Absolutely not. Is it a matter of, does everybody like playing politics? No. But in hindsight, when you think about the masses and the folks that, that consume and watch the product, it just ultimately, while he wants to be the voice of the voiceless and speak to those who can't necessarily speak up for themselves and the marginalized and the little guy and whatnot, on a regular basis, in reality, stepping up to our bosses, having discourse, or threatening physical harm towards our bosses or anybody in our workplace, we can't do that on a regular basis. And I think like that's where ultimately Punk kind of needs to sort of get a grasp of and really understand. But again, this is somebody who's a millionaire. This is somebody who who has made a name for herself. But you can imagine if it was the other way around, someone who is a wrestler who's just coming in, trying to make his or her bones in the game, and trying to get some recognition and gets established themselves, in the wrestling business. I doubt that this is the way, especially if there's displeasure, I doubt this is the way that they would necessarily handle it, So there's definitely a certain privilege that goes along with it. But now to Tony Khan, this is the chaos you created, and ironically enough, I looked up a article just to get clarity on what the EVP's role is in AEW, because I just find it like, because as I reference and think about CM Punk referencing them last year during the media scrum during that, and then having a brawl with them, it just led me to think like, what exactly, what communication or what could have led or could have caused so much discourse to where CM Punk just has to brawl with these guys, right? And uh, Kenny Omega and Young Bucks, they do have creative authority. They are consulted as it pertains to the creative side, as far as like stories and the matches or whatnot. But this just goes back to Tony Khan. Too many cooks in the kitchen. You need to get it needs to be a separation of church and state, right? You take on the burden, of having to write storylines and creatively think about what's going to happen for three weekly shows, at least 3 weekly shows that's aired. One that's taped right after the other show, which is Rampage, as well as the pay-per-views, right? That's a lot. It's a lot of undertaking, especially trying to manage and run a whole company, as its CEO. So you can imagine that. And while I give grace to Kenny and the Young Bucks, to a degree, because they have not come out as being guys that feel like they need to be pushed to the forefront or needing to be the guys. But there needs to be a separation of church and state. Like, everybody has to, have defined roles. We have to have, they have to have their defined roles. And I think that for Tony Khan, he has to step back and just focus on being the best businessman, being the best CEO that he can, because creating an environment to where you ultimately are leaving yourself open to attack by your talent, put you in a position to where ultimately a lot of other wrestlers potentially might also lose respect for you and your brand being sullied by this particular behavior, especially what's going on in the back. And then if it spills out into the ring, or if it spills out into your product, it's going to leave you vulnerable to losing TV deals, to losing marketing your product. And I don't think that you need that. He doesn't. Tony Khan definitely does not need that, especially for what he's trying to accomplish. And while, like I said, I give AEW its flowers as a young company to get into this particular industry, where WWE is running sports entertainment side of things, has been running wrestling for decades now. I credit them for taking on that giant and undertaking that task as far as competition. But Tony Khan has to get ahead of this. This is something to which it is unfortunate. And if Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer is saying that they're playing it down as far as Punk lunging at Tony Khan, and then Tony Khan coming on to AEW Collision saying that he felt threatened for his life, for his safety, that's a problem. All right, that's a problem. And while I'm not saying that you have to be this man to be in the gym 24/7, getting only 2 hours of sleep a night, and taking martial arts classes or anything like that to defend yourself, you certainly have to establish a level of decorum and a baseline as far as how the talent and the wrestlers should be conducting themselves and how discourse should be handled. CM Punk, wish him well, and I feel like more than likely he will probably end up. This is just my guess. This is just my prediction. No way am I saying that it's 100% a fact, or that there's any particular outlets out there that's suggesting this. This is particularly for my own opinion. I do feel like CM Punk will be going back to WWE at some point, because a part of me feels like Vince McMahon really likes the fact that the value of his guys, or guys coming from WWE, their stock being raised so high to where Tony Khan has to reach out and sign them to big contracts. I think Vince McMahon likes and appreciates and you know, sort of adds that, as a form of as a notch of his belt, or adds some form of bragging rights. Honestly, I do think that he likes the competition of it all, but I don't think right now he takes AEW seriously, especially considering that AEW was able to accomplish such a big feat in the sense of um, selling out Wembley Stadium, and the only thing that we're talking about is a disgruntled employee that ultimately lunged at the boss, and he was fired within a week's time. So, uh, yeah, Tony Khan, I certainly hope that you take this as a lesson, because CM Punk may be the first to have gone this far, but he certainly will not be the last. And while I'm sure that this definitely will hurt merch sales, this will probably hurt the pockets of AEW a little bit. I hope that you just take a long look at yourself in the mirror and look at your product and invest in the guys that are there. And again, establish a baseline of decorum. Get some folks in there that can put some space between you and the talent. Separate the roles. Invest in some good storylines, some good storytelling, and the talent just having a voice, but not having too much of a voice to where it creates this discourse, or think that ultimately they're going to intimidate you, or into pushing them, or that they're just going to act anyhow whenever they have an issue with you. So that wraps up this video. This is number 3. Again, if you're new here, appreciate you stopping by. Hope you continue to keep coming back. Again, my goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can only do that with y'all coming back and listening to my content. If you are not new here, I appreciate you for coming back and sticking with me and helping me to reach my goal. So please like, share, and subscribe through the YouTube thing, and I will see y'all in the next video.